Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7 as I continue my car reviews for update 1.27. Up now we're going to have the Corvette Stingray C8, and this was probably one of the, if not the most requested car in probably Gran Turismo 7's history. Obviously it's not been around that long, but again it just felt like it was one of those, main modern cars that just wasn't in the game. It felt completely ignored, but it's here now and it's updated the Corvette roster of cars. As you can see, the previous kind of model that we had that was closest to this, as you can see on the right hand side there, was a Corvette C7 Z01 from 2019. So now we do have this car and it comes in at 85,000 credits, which to me is surprisingly cheap for the amount of performance this thing gives. As you can see, almost 500 brake horsepower with this car, and it's very much a completely different design to the rest of the Corvettes. So let's go and check it out. So the Chevrolet Corvette C8 Stingray is finally here, but before we get into the main review, let me just tell you how these reviews work if you've never ever joined me for a car review. Essentially, we get the car straight out of the box, no tune on it, no modifications to it, and take it on a hot lap around the Nordschleife layout of the Nürburgring. Then, if it is possible, we will modify it as much as possible and take it for another hot lap around the high speed ring, and we'll essentially see where it places on both the Nordschleife hot lap leaderboard and the high speed ring leaderboard for modified cars. So that's essentially how these work. Overall, I'll give you my opinion as we go through on both the stock and the modified version. So I'm not going to lie, the C8 Stingray is probably the car that I saw the most in my comments ever since really they kind of started doing post-launch cars for GT7, which was way back in April, I believe. Now, a couple of months after that, all of a sudden C8 Stingray comments start appearing, and they just did not stop. It was all the time, every update, every time you mentioned anything about an update, you can guarantee there was at least a couple of people mentioning this car, or at least the C8 model in general, and I cannot disagree. It is long overdue. It's a bit of a strange one, like I said, having such a modern, I guess racing game with not very many kind of up-to-date cars in was just very kind of strange. Now it has kind of picked up a little bit over the last few updates. We're getting some more modern cars through, and finally getting the C8 means we have the most modern Corvette in the game, which to me is, the staple of any racing game, to be honest, the Corvette being the icon that it is. But what do I really think about this car? Well, in all honesty, I have to go back to the first time I ever saw any footage of this thing, any pictures of this thing. I remember just kind of seeing it and thinking, well, you can tell it's a Corvette, but it looks radically different. In all honesty, it's kind of lost that, I guess, American sports car muscly look and gone way more towards kind of what I'd class as sort of European styling. It's very kind of, I don't know, it's difficult to explain, but it just doesn't really scream American sports car anymore like the, C7 did, really, in all honesty. It really is a bit of a departure, and I've kind of always thought that about the C8. Then I kind of saw it, footage of it being driven and all that stuff, and again, I still kind of held that belief that, yes, this is definitely Corvette's, shift towards kind of taking on that European sports car market. And I feel like I still hold that opinion after driving it in GT7. In all honesty, for me, this is not just an American sports car or, kind of an offshoot of a muscle car anymore. This is a full-blown sports car from Chevrolet. And in all honesty, it's brilliant. So within the context of GT7, I honestly, the first time I jumped in this car was finding myself kind of struggling to get used to how this car felt. I was really not that confident going in and driving this car. There was just something about trying to get it through the corners and getting it slowed down that just felt just a tiny bit off. And I still feel like I feel that way after doing my full review on it and, testing it more even after doing this review. I just cannot quite put my finger on it, that, you know, bog standard, this car just feels a little bit off, and I just cannot really put my finger on it. For me personally, I feel like it's definitely kind of, when it comes to slowing the car down and getting it through the corners, where the main issue of this car is. But overall, that does not take away from the performance of this car. No, it's not going to be winning any awards for, you know, being mind-blowingly fast or the best car through any corners or anything like that. But overall, it is a very good package. And at the asking price in GT7 at 85,000 credits, that's next to nothing for the amount of performance you're getting from this thing. Like I said, it's putting out nearly 500 brake horsepower in this game, and that is definitely nothing to kind of, you know, turn your nose up at. That's a decent performance figure, especially for a car this cheap. You can do much, much worse in terms of an overall package. But from standard, like I said, it's just not really an award winner. It's great, it's a good overall package, but nothing kind of too standout or too special. Obviously, like a lot of cars, I do expect to see different versions of this car added over the next few years to Gran Turismo 7. So we'll probably see some more beefed up, more aggressive, kind of properly focused versions, which I feel like, you know, will probably be a whole lot of fun. I will be very surprised if they don't do that, considering just how popular this car really is, and probably how many different versions it'll end up with by the end of its life cycle. So it will be interesting to, you know, maybe eventually go back and compare. Obviously, I've driven the C8 in other racing games, and it's just, you know, feels much more complete in those games. Obviously, I'm not going to mention them outside Gran Turismo, but yeah, overall in Gran Turismo 7, it's not a bad package. It's solid, but nothing kind of too standout-ish. Although I'd say this is probably Corvette's answer to European sports cars, and maybe even something like, you know, along the lines of the NSX, I honestly feel like styling-wise, it's very kind of close to the kind of more modern NSX that we do have. Obviously, they're a bit, you know, uncomparable considering, you know, how the NSX really is, you know, four-wheel drive and all that stuff. But from a styling standpoint, I'd say the styling is kind of in line with sort of European and that kind of more modern NSX. Very kind of, you know, purpose built. It all looks like it's doing something, and it's all there for a reason. None of it looks like it's kind of just put there for the sake of style. In all honesty, I think it's quite a modest looking car. I don't think it's kind of over the top and too standoutish, not in its kind of Stingray form anyway. You know, when it comes to, you know, the race cars and such, it's a completely different story. But yeah, overall, solid looking package, solid drive. But now let's go on to talking about the modified version. This is where, in my opinion, this C8 becomes a whole different beast. With upgrades, fully upgraded, this car is just absolutely nuts. Now, all of the Corvettes are pretty much that way. Once they kind of get the tuning upgrades on, they become whole different beasts. Even something like the C4, you know, the C7, all of them are just absolutely crazy machines. And I'm pleased to say, look, the C8, it follows in those footsteps. Once you have this thing fully upgraded, it will go way past the 200-mile-an-hour barrier, and it will handle like an absolute dream. Even in its kind of most aggressive turn-up form, it's a great car. It honestly kind of changes it from a great all-round car to a very, very good full-blown, almost race car-like feel. It really is a car to drive. It's amazing, and I cannot fault it. So in all honesty, if you're paying 85 grand for the kind of base car, when you've put 200 to 300k mods on it, you're talking upwards of nearly 400k for a car that could probably beat some of the hypercars in this game, in all honesty. And it's really, really good, like impressively good. So that is the lap done. Let's talk about the interior before we talk more about the modified version. As you can see, for me, this is probably an okay interior. I don't really think there's much to it. It's quite, I don't really want to sound too harsh, but it's quite dull and really nothing too standoutish. Apart from the wheel's really square looking, really kind of unique. But apart from that, it's an okay interior. Here's my individual sector time. So overall, we did it in a 7 minutes, 36.238. That is in its standard form, no tune. So let's see exactly where the C8 comes in. So as you can see, this falls in the 600 pp category, and it's just a little bit slower than a Suzuki VGT, that being the standard model. But still, with the amount of kind of tech that's in that Suzuki VGT, That's actually quite impressive. As you can see, it's also just a little bit quicker than the 911 GT3, the 997 from 2009. It's almost always already faster than the F430 and the Cayman GT4 there by, you know, a decent margin. But with all that being said, let's check this thing out. I told you it's pretty much a full-blown race car, so that's exactly the look I went for with this thing. And in all honesty, it's absolutely incredible. It's essentially taking a car that's very solid, maybe a kind of 7 out of 10 on the performance scale, to a full-blown, you know, 11 out of 10 crazy, you know, race car. Essentially, it's incredible. It really did just kind of blow my mind how good this thing is when you start putting upgrades on. I wasn't expecting too much after driving this standard model. You know, I thought, okay, it'll probably just be an okay modified car, but no, this thing is crazy fast. It's a little bit unstable, in all honesty. It's probably one of the only cars on a modified lap time where I've actually had to put a single bit of traction control on just to kind of keep it from, you know, absolutely throwing itself out around the high speed ring. As you can see, it gets an absolute speed wobble, and then that's just a mistake on me. Just getting on the grass there really did upset the balance of the car. But overall, I was impressed. As soon as we hit those straights or anything really exiting the corners and such, this thing just launched, and I mean launched to an impressive degree. It was really, really good. Through the corners, it's actually not too bad. It just seems to be maybe the ride height on this was just a little bit too low as standard. Obviously, I cannot, you know, put tunes on these because it will just make it unfair to everything else. I can put upgrades, but I can't, you know, fine tune them. So it just felt like it was just bottoming out a little bit too much. As you can see, we get another bit of a wobble out of there, and then we're on the big cambered banking before we go through, almost sliding through there. Eventually, we do get it stable, and we're going to power out all the way down to the finish line. We was hitting well over 200 miles an hour on that original run down the main straight and such. Yeah, very impressive lap time. So here's the individual sectors, a 1 minute 5.298, which is really quite good. But it'll be interesting to see really where this thing ranks alongside the likes of the Z Performance and the Bugatti Chiron, which absolutely smashed the record the other day. And as you can see, it comes dot in between the two. It's the first car in the 1 minute 5s. It's almost a full second faster than the Z Performance 23 when fully upgraded, which to me is just very, very impressive. As you can see, there's the other Corvette, the C4, with a 108.225. So it's, you know, again, you know, 3 seconds faster than that in one lap of the high speed ring. That is very, very impressive in my opinion. So overall, the C8 Corvette Stingray, was it worth the wait? Is it a good addition to GT7? In all honesty, yes. This carries on the trend of not having a bad car in update 1.27. That means we've only got one more car left to review, that being the Alfa Romeo. Will that carry on the trend of literally not having a bad car in this update, or will it fall at the last hurdle? Be sure to tune in tomorrow to find out, as I will be completing my full roundup of the update 1.27 cars individually before going on to finally ranking them in my personal order. So that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for your support recently. It's been absolutely amazing. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn those notifications on. Check the description for my Twitter, my Discord, my donation link, anything you want to do to help out the channel. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you all later. Have a great day, guys. Peace!